Reincarnation is defined as 1. A person or animal in whom a particular soul is believed to have been reborn. 2. A new version of something from the past. It is believed to be the religious or philosophical belief that the soul or spirit, after biological death, begins a new life in a new body that may be human, animal, or spiritual depending on the moral quality of the previous life's actions. Although this should now be revised and understood that having sentient forms is the baseline of our reincarnations, the animal kingdom, now forever being below this baseline and we will not reincarnate into. I feel I must give a brief outline of reincarnation to continue, there will be many further understandings later as well. The very difference between consciousness is reprocessing. We are given new insight from the current collective consciousness. This may not initially be seen, but it is instilled in all consciousness for progression, our true unity and source. Within the universal mind, still of consciousness, this consciousness is imparted to form, and thus evolution gathers from these two paths. 1. Collective beings reincarnate, they can gain new consciousness and apply this to their future development. 2. Outer beings incarnate, they are corrupted by the outer universe and thus not given any new consciousness upon their incarnations until they are free from this cycle. 3. Perfected beings manifest, incarnate, and reincarnate depending upon their reasons. They manifest when creating avatars, this can be achieved in any place within the universe that is known to them, if not known then they cannot. They incarnate when merging with a planetary evolution, when doing this they have accepted existing within a direct region of the universe until that portioned area achieves collective freedom. Lastly, they reincarnate, they must live out a single life but are free conscious beings after the body ends. They do this to experience the overall understanding of the forms. Perfected beings only hail from the higher hierarchies and these abilities are of consciousness alone. 4. Star beings, which must be added for complete realization, technologically control their life cycles through various forms of memory transplant, bioengineering, or cybernetic advancements. Star beings physically travel throughout the universe which can be dimensional, teleportation, or physical. Any advanced form of manipulation of matter to transport themselves. These beings will not hail from consciousness but can easily be of a kind alignment for the better percentage of them. There are limits to the distances they can travel, so will generally keep close records of universal movements and their windows of opportunities to explore vast amounts of their areas. Star beings hail from a most ancient of waters evolution and are of mind alone. I must add that this is also where we may advance in the future, and should we take on any of these advancements, it would be of universal mind consciously, or the outer universe corruptively. I must now give a historical evolution to reincarnation as our consciousness progressed and assembled more realizations. We were meant to fragment into forms, then reassemble our experiences into a collective whole. This was to be finalized with absolute truth. I in no means intend that this is the end of this advancement, I am just catching us up to speed with our very fast-paced evolutions. Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. The concepts of the cycle of birth and death, samsara, and liberation partly derive from ascetic traditions that arose in India around the middle of the first millennium BCE. The first textual references to the idea of reincarnation appear in the Upanishads of the late Vedic period from 1100 to 500 BCE, this predates the Buddha and the Mahavira. The tribes of the Ganges Valley or the Dravidian traditions of South India have been proposed as another early source of reincarnation beliefs. The idea of reincarnation, samsara, did not exist in the early Vedic religions. The early Vedas do not mention the doctrine of rebirth but do mention the belief in an afterlife. It is in the early Upanishads, which are before Buddha and Mahavira, that these ideas began to flourish. Detailed descriptions first appear around the first millennium BCE in diverse traditions, including Buddhism, Jainism, and various schools of Hindu philosophy, each of which gave unique expression to the base realization. The texts of ancient Jainism that have survived into the modern era are post-Mahavira, likely from the last centuries of the first millennium BCE, and extensively mention rebirth doctrines. The Jaina philosophy assumes that the soul, Jiva in Jainism and Atman in Hinduism, exists and is eternal, passing through cycles of transmigration and rebirth. After death, reincarnation into a new body is asserted to be instantaneous in early Jaina texts. Depending upon the accumulated karma, rebirth occurs into a higher or lower bodily form, either in heaven or hell or the earthly realm. No bodily form is permanent, everyone dies and reincarnates further. Liberation, Kevalya, from reincarnation is possible, however, through removing and ending karmic accumulations to one's soul. From the early stages of Jainism on, a human being was considered the highest mortal being, with the potential to achieve liberation, particularly through asceticism. The early Buddhist texts discuss rebirth as part of the doctrine of samsara. This asserts that the nature of existence is a suffering-laden cycle of life, death, and rebirth, without beginning or end. Also referred to as the wheel of existence, it is often mentioned in Buddhist texts as rebirth or rebecoming. Liberation from this cycle of existence, nirvana, is the foundation and the most important purpose of Buddhism. Buddhist texts also assert that an enlightened person knows his previous births, a knowledge achieved through high levels of meditative concentration. Tibetan Buddhism discusses death, bardo, an intermediate state, and rebirth in texts such as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. While nirvana is taught as the ultimate goal in Theravadan Buddhism and is essential to Mahayana Buddhism, the vast majority of contemporary lay Buddhists focus on accumulating good karma and acquiring merit to achieve a better reincarnation in the next life. In early Buddhist traditions, samsara cosmology consisted of 5 realms through which the wheel of existence cycled. This included hells, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and gods, which I have gone over in earlier episodes. In latter Buddhist traditions, this list grew to a list of 6 realms of rebirth, adding demigods. Reincarnation in Celtic Paganism. The Pythagorean doctrine prevails among the Gauls, teaching that the souls of men are immortal and that after a fixed number of years they will enter into another body. The principal point of their doctrine is that the soul does not die and that after death it passes from one body into another. The main object of all education is, in their opinion, to imbue their scholars with a firm belief in the indestructibility of the human soul, which, according to their belief, merely passes at death from one tenement to another, for by such doctrine alone, they say, which robs death of all its terrors, can the highest form of human courage be developed. Diodorus also recorded the Gaul belief that human souls were immortal, and that after a prescribed number of years they would commence upon a new life in another body. He added that Gauls had the custom of casting letters to their deceased upon the funeral pyres, through which the dead would be able to read them. Valerius Maximus also recounted they had the custom of lending sums of money to each other which would be repayable in the next world. This was mentioned by Pomponius Mela, who also recorded Gauls buried or burnt with them things they would need in the next life, to the point some would jump into the funeral piles of their relatives in order to cohabitate in the new life with them. Hippolytus of Rome believed the Gauls had been taught the doctrine of reincarnation by a slave of Pythagoras named Zalmoxis. Conversely, Clement of Alexandria believed Pythagoras himself had learned it from the Celts and not the opposite, claiming he had been taught by Galatian Gauls, Hindu priests, and Zoroastrians. However, author T.D. Kendrick rejected a real connection between Pythagoras and the Celtic idea of reincarnation, noting their beliefs to have substantial differences, and any contact to be historically unlikely. Nonetheless, he proposed the possibility of an ancient common source, also related to the Orphic religion and Thracian systems of belief, reincarnation in Germanic paganism. Surviving texts indicate that there was a belief in rebirth in Germanic paganism. Examples include figures from Eddic poetry and sagas, potentially by way of a process of naming and/or through the family line. Scholars have discussed the implications of these attestations and proposed theories regarding belief in reincarnation among the Germanic peoples prior to Christianization and potentially to some extent in folk belief thereafter. Judaism, Christianity, and Gnosticism. The belief in reincarnation developed among Jewish mystics in the medieval world, among whom differing explanations were given of the afterlife, although with a universal belief in an immortal soul. It was explicitly rejected by Saadia Gaon. Today, reincarnation is an esoteric belief within many streams of modern Judaism. Kabbalah teaches a belief in Gilgul, transmigration of souls, and hence the belief in reincarnation is universal in Hasidic Judaism, which regards the Kabbalah as sacred and authoritative, and is also held as an esoteric belief within modern Orthodox Judaism. In Judaism, the Zohar, first published in the 13th century, discusses reincarnation at length, especially in the Torah portion Balak. The most comprehensive Kabbalistic work on reincarnation, Shar HaGilgilim, was written by Chaim Vital, based on the teachings of his mentor, the 16th century Kabbalist Isaac Luria, who was said to know the past lives of each person through his semi-prophetic abilities. The 18th century Lithuanian master scholar and Kabbalist, Elijah of Vilna, known as the Vilna Gaon, authored a commentary on the biblical book of Jonah as an allegory of reincarnation. The practice of conversion to Judaism is sometimes understood within Orthodox Judaism in terms of reincarnation. According to this school of thought in Judaism, when non-Jews are drawn to Judaism, it is because they had been Jews in a former life. Such souls may wander among nations through multiple lives, until they find their way back to Judaism, including through finding themselves born in a Gentile family with a lost Jewish ancestor. There is extensive literature on Jewish folk and traditional stories that refer to reincarnation. The concept of reincarnation disappeared with the rise of early Christianity, reincarnation being incompatible with the Christian core doctrine of salvation of the faithful after death. Several Christian Gnostic sects professed reincarnation. The Sethians and followers of Valentinus believed in it. The followers of Buddhism of Mesopotamia, a sect of the 2nd century deemed heretical by the Catholic Church, drew upon Chaldean astrology, to which Buddhism's son Harmonius, educated in Athens, added Greek ideas including a sort of reincarnation in Renaissance and early modern era. While reincarnation has been a matter of faith in some communities from an early date, it has also frequently been argued for on principle, as Plato does when he argues that the number of souls must be finite because souls are indestructible. Benjamin Franklin held a similar view. By the early 20th century, interest in reincarnation had been introduced into the nascent discipline of psychology, largely due to the influence of William James, who raised aspects of the philosophy of mind, comparative religion, the psychology of religious experience, and the nature of empiricism. James was influential in the founding of the American Society for Psychical Research in New York City in 1885, 3 years after the British Society for Psychical Research was inaugurated in London, leading to the systematic, critical investigation of paranormal phenomena. Famous World War II American General George Patton was a strong believer in reincarnation, believing, among other things, he was a reincarnation of the Carthaginian general Hannibal. At this time, popular awareness of the idea of reincarnation was boosted by the Theosophical Society's dissemination of systematized and universalized Indian concepts and also by the influence of magical societies like the Golden Dawn. Notable personalities like Annie Besant, W.B. Yeats, and Dion Fortune made the subject almost as familiar an element of the popular culture of the West as of the East. By 1924 the subject could be satirized in popular children's books. Humorist Don Marquis created a fictional cat named Mehetabel who claimed to be a reincarnation of Queen Cleopatra. In today's world, past life regression is a method that uses hypnosis to recover what practitioners believe are memories of past lives or incarnations. Past life regression is typically undertaken either in pursuit of a spiritual experience or in a psychotherapeutic setting. Most advocates loosely adhere to beliefs about reincarnation, though religious traditions that incorporate reincarnation generally do not include the idea of repressed memories of past lives. The technique used during past life regression involves the subject answering a series of questions while hypnotized to reveal the identity and events of alleged past lives, a method similar to that used in recovered memory therapy and one that, similarly, often misrepresents memory as a faithful recording of previous events rather than a constructed set of recollections. Through this, there has surfaced an unaccountable amount of stories that open our eyes to the possibility of reincarnations. Though we are not 100% in a collective agreement. The acceptance is growing fast, and with a realization that undeniable to even the strongest cynic. Collective universe reincarnations. I have spoken much within these episodes about reincarnation. I thought that I would give us a bit more clarity to have when these times present themselves in our cycles. Perhaps the most sought-after understanding would be why is the consciousness lost during these life cycles? Each one of us has had brief concepts about another life and has quickly dismissed them. For the soul within the collective that doesn't have control over their reincarnations, it's not as complicated. To be reincarnated takes a willing mind. Somewhere within the process we must accept wanting a new life. This new life comes with new input from consciousness, and a new chance to experience physical form while advancing our own personal development. At this point, we already accepted that we are going to outlive this next body. But the communication between us and our guides isn't at all verbal. We do not sit down with pen and paper to decide our next lifetime and lessons. Souls communicate through consciousness, a mind we haven't fully awakened to at this stage. Impressions of great intensity can flood our minds. We will see the entire new life before we reincarnate, but the lessons will never be learned if we knew what was to inevitably come. We seat ourselves in slumber and the guide places us back into the physical world. We must decide on this. If we wish to go back, then we must place ourselves in a slumbering state. Many have stayed for hundreds of years before deciding. Some cultures have developed beliefs that visiting and gaining blessings from their ancestors is needed, and so we stay to impart wisdom to our generations until these beliefs cease. Either through obligations or enjoyment, we stay until we are ready. We seat ourselves to protect the integrity of our true selves. When being reborn into the world we are given new consciousness. This is done in our slumbering form that is encased and protected. When entering through the birthing process we are bombarded with personalities from our genetic line and our race. These personalities will attempt to mold us into their concept of the current world's understanding. The genetic personality is dependent upon each of your parents' lifetime of experiences. If they are in conflict with themselves in any way, perhaps haven't accepted their lives or are in an internal struggle with their experiences in life, This will be impressed upon you. Many times a positive parent's experience will phase out a negative parent. The race personality can also be in conflict. In most cases where different races are involved, there are internal struggles that each parent may have had to find peace with. Each race personality comes with a force of ownership in this new form. If each parent has identified with their race personality, then this personality would in turn attempt ownership of us. If in fact, both or one parent has conquered their race personality, then you will be free from its impressions. Throughout this process, we are seated and safe within our encasement, and upon birth, these personalities will begin to form us as we grow. Here we can find great and unique features formed from our genetic and race personalities. They are blending and finding a way to harmonize and form. This seed with our true selves will remain encased but will begin to emanate. This usually is what occurs the moment we begin to remember our experiences as children. Some children begin to remember experiences as young as 1 year of age, whereas others' first remembered experiences could be at 3. This speaks to the amount of time they were in conflict with these personalities. In a perfect scenario, both parents have conquered fully their own personalities. This newborn will be free and joyous from birth, and there is a feeling of great lightness to their energy. The true self will take charge of these other personalities upon waking and seek to organize what they have considered harmonizing already. The moment the true self wakens, they become fully connected to the physical world, and with it karmic strings begin to form the already established genetic and race personalities. This doesn't happen instantly, for these strings are tracing themselves back to the beginning of their lines and where tribulations have occurred. Our personal karma doesn't officially begin until the chakras become established, each individual to our needs. Disclosure. There is much happening within our world as we attempt to come to grasp how we view conception. Initially, with the rights that our societies have formed for women's choices, it could easily be conceivable for experiences that could be gained through either choice that she had. Meaning that whichever choice she had when having to confront pregnancy could conceivably be what was meant to be learned on a spiritual path. Taking such choices away could easily change the outcome of the experience. I cannot debate the prospect of what is considered life, even from what I have awakened to understand. I know well when the consciousness enters, but what if this was the path that was intended to gain experience from all parties? Individual contemplation is needed. Even with such freedoms, we have not seen a decrease in births. Outer universe incarnations. 2 things to note: a collective being will mostly be born in the collective universe. An infective being will mostly be born in the outer universe. The gray area here is when a being is struggling to free themselves from corruption. They may jump back and forth and will just need guided consciousness to break this cycle. We can see this in collective souls giving birth to children they have complete misunderstandings with on viewpoints of common humanity. Of course, children go through their stages, but this is very different. There is a core value that the parents both possessed but just couldn't instill within the children. This gray area leaves with it a host of open complexities that must be looked at in future writings. But the collective parent will need contemplation before action. Conscious observation with confronting truth will give to them the steps to progress. Understand that this child gained an understanding that brought them forth into the collective, or they would not have been born here. They now need to find a way through the residue left from being corrupted. Generally, we cannot conceive of an infective being and a collective being bringing forth a reincarnation. Infective beings in a relationship with a collective being will quickly infect the collective being. In the unfortunate event that rape occurs to a collective being, there is a grace period when the collective being struggles to find acceptance of the event. If they do, they will have the opportunity to cleanse the baby forming within them, which is a power granted only at this time. I have personally witnessed this, and it is miraculous, but the toughest to achieve internally from the mother-to-be. This grace period will generally be during the early stages as the baby is forming. Should she conquer her own suffering and remain a collective being, the child will be placed into the collective this lifetime. Should she become an infective being, so too will the child. Should she only achieve cleansing herself after birth, then the baby will be infective, but at least still holds the ability to be raised by a collective being. This is an even greater understanding that mothers hold over the blessings of life. To be an infective being will incarnate you time and again in an infective family. This continues the cycle of corruption. You come into the world with no new consciousness of the planet's progression of understandings and viewpoints. Just the negative viewpoints that you have gained from prior lives will be impressed and coded onto your true self's encasing. This entropic force travels with you as a parasite clung to your true self. When all stages of genetic and race personalities come forth, they will do the same as before. But in most cases, you will be hindered by 2 already infective parents, adding their unconscious experiences with these personalities. Once you begin to emanate from your true self, It must first get through the dark mass that has surrounded you, which is an assemblage of viewpoints, not of truth. You can continue this amassing continuously, thickening and strengthening itself every time you agree with these viewpoints. The events that can help during this time will weaken the false viewpoints and even at times give you a sense of clarity. Feeling warmth and kindness from others which are freely given without any attachments. Conscious beings looking at you and piercing through the mass to connect to your true self. Karma from past deeds ripening to grant you blessings. Or you decide to not succumb to these viewpoints and look for a way out of them. We see this last part done endlessly, beings rising out of their suppressed situations and becoming their own heroes. If they do so and develop kindness and compassion for others in general hardships, then they can fully free themselves. But if they do so with the negative viewpoint of self-survival and it persists, then they have just added to their corruption. Awakened reincarnation. Now I would like to discuss an awakened being's reincarnation. Their cycles will be very different compared to the collective being who is not awakened. Awakened ones have already achieved the lessons we are still learning. They will only take on a challenge if it becomes something of interest to them. For instance, if in a lifetime they become curious about another being's experience. This might make an impression that they would wish to experience to gain knowledge of or to free themselves of feeling concerned. Their reincarnations are mainly theirs to design. When passing they continue this process until they have gained a love and compassion for all beings. They seek to weed out all individual concerns and find the compassion that encompasses all of creation. They can just as easily reincarnate into infective families, but this is generally acceptable once fully awakened. There have been numerous awakened beings set back a few lifetimes due to this. They were still too young and couldn't fully take on the onslaught once the outer universe became aware of them. They were unfortunately then responsible for giving a push in consciousness to the outer universe. Though not forbidden by the higher council, it is not fully acceptable unless done with a group effort. A fully awakened being does this by concealment, a gift gained on higher levels of awareness. They can go through an entire lifetime and never be noticed while freeing the souls within the corruption. They are just seen as barely accepted with their infective communities. These awakened beings end their experience generally leaving to show others the possibilities. But will stand their ground if they gain a group willing to grow. There have been stories of awakened beings reincarnating to free a prior soul they knew once, but this rarely turned out well. The already binding connection to the now infective being was to the detriment of the awakened being, forcing the awakened to cleanse itself for a while. The ways in which awakened beings reincarnate are as follows. Temporary loss of awareness and mind. The awakened being does this to gain a full experience of the life reincarnated into. This being will exhibit an overabundance of interest and fascination with life. More so than the average child, this child's questions about life will be extremely insightful, critically piecing together all that it is told. Even calling parents on any missteps in their teachings. Though extremely respectable and ethical, they are capable of debating on an unreal level with the parents at times. If they are understood and not hindered by the parents, these ancient souls will justifiably push all the family members' awareness up. Locked, these reincarnations are marked with key scenarios that must occur in specific means for the awakened soul to come into full awakening. This form of reincarnation can take on many lifetimes until these events take place. This is not generally the choice of the awakened being, but can be foreseen by higher sources to the awakened. If accepted, they will be granted a guardian to oversee their travels. Once achieved, full awareness is instantly granted and what was to be understood or learned is taken into consciousness. Complete awareness with a set purpose of their life's path. No surprise, all other beings are met as if they were expecting them. They can exhibit higher than normal emotions when surprised, mainly because they did not see it beforehand. It's generally delighted. Assisted awareness is lost, so another awakened being must assist their life path. This teacher generally knows but will not openly explain. This could be signified as a test for either soul. To become a teacher or a student. Forgotten, this awakened being has decided to discipline itself. It will take it upon itself due to events that have harmed its consciousness. They will secure their true self and bounce around throughout lifetimes until they've found realization of what presented the trouble in the first place. They must see for themselves why they did such a thing, and usually, the key lies in their forgiveness of themselves. No other aware being can break this. They feel a strong being contained. Forced, on a few occasions, if an awakened being does harm to another aware being or greater. The awakened being may be judged by collective consciousness or the high council to be cut off from consciousness yet given just enough flow to stay within collective reincarnation. Perhaps not wanting these actions to be influential within a new consciousness. This awakened being will essentially move to the status of a collective being and will stay there until past events are cleansed from them. Awakened beings are rare in that they have amassed a greater amount of themselves throughout lifetimes. Our concepts of reincarnation, though prized as great strides with our now evolving beliefs that this actually occurs. It is still entrenched in the first root lie and gives us the false narrative that we reincarnate individually, that karma is only something we alone amass. It does not account for the residual of the other forms that have amassed with us, or that we have fragments of our true self scattered throughout evolution. Much less that we cohabitate within two evolutions in these current forms. A direct realization of this will grant us a truly comprehensible consciousness, as we will be able to remove experiences that hinder us from our true seeds. The known universe exists within the many cosmic branches. Our true unity lies within our connections to all on a canvas of synchronicity I have not heard any enlightened speak of. The Absolute reflected in the Omniconscious, the Omniconscious reflected in the Source of Consciousness, and the Universal Mind. Then reflected into the variety of life within our universe. We, when becoming conscious, reflected ourselves as well and produced a true seed. This true seed may have fragmented a number of times only known to us, but will generally move into experiences that were designed for our particular paths. We can thus coexist multiple times within the same time periods. Amassment occurs when each fraction achieves a level of conscious development, becoming one in a new consciousness over cycles. We can now conceive that the physical universe is first reflective, then manifested by consciousness. Through this manifestation, we automatically manifest the second, third, and sixth absolute laws and become part of the physical time stream. This brings with us a dependency on prior reincarnations and fragments of the original forms. We dislodge from this and become a self-manifested seed, though still part of a whole, when we come to the realization. Much like the seed of a tree dislodging to manifest its own growth. Thus, our true forms are manifested from our very first manifestation when we enter and bring forth the reflected concepts of I am. Thus, bringing forth into manifestation the fourth absolute law as consciousness knows of consciousness. Beings can exist for ages and not once produce this I am realization. As we have seen when learning of our deep past historical ancestors. They just continued to reprocess until those began to awaken. At the very moment which they did, they manifested a true form seed. Any further reincarnations would thus become a fragmented seed until they realize this, fully amalgamating when they fully amass these seeds. We tend to view the explosion of populations here on Earth as a sign of our physical productive qualities. However, this population increase is due to the many true form seeds that have developed, thus amassing more fragmented souls that now must be reassembled. The only way to truly diminish overpopulation is easily a conscious path of unification. We have been made to understand that we always were. This is true in the sense of reprocessing in the physical realm. It is not true as well until we manifested the conceivability of I am. Light being reincarnation. These beings have a reincarnation that easily moves throughout lifetimes, their higher consciousness oversees our collective one. They can be from the plane of holy but can easily be from anywhere from the known universe. When holy beings do this, it grants them access to becoming a greater being and joining us on a higher plane. Other light beings may already hail from higher consciousness and just seek to assist our development. What few know, however, is the sacrifices made when coming into Earth's evolution. They give up their attachments to their own realm and no longer possess the means to go back until the Earth beings have evolved collectively to do such. They now exist here on Earth going through lifetimes assisting us. They have unmatched skills as being spiritually far more evolved. Primarily visiting us in astral forms but will physically manifest avatars with little effort when needed. They are very aware of all thoughts within the collective and on many occasions will present themselves to get a full understanding of where we are at consciously. We have most likely met them many times on our journeys and have not fully understood how just looking into their eyes has changed our perspectives. They do not become personally involved in our lives, for we still have too much of a grasping quality. They do not seek to lead us astray by us looking at them as gods. The kindest thing for us is to oversee from afar. But they await a time when they can meet us on common ground. Other beings may visit from the collective universe, but they have not made such a sacrifice as these types. The reincarnated light beings here would most likely be easily overlooked by most awakened and below collective beings. Greater beings will know them well, for they are more capable of understanding their commitments to a greater good. You may now be ready for this realization: a healthy uncorrupted soul does not leave Earth's evolution. They do not travel about in limbo and need to go into the light. These recorded NDEs are accounting for what they have been influenced to believe. It is amazing how when we lose the connection to a physical body how capable we are to gain our powers of creation back. How quickly the universe becomes what we wish it to. And it will become what we wish it to, even if we feel we have no power over it. We can be so enthralled with these NDEs or actual deaths that we float about in the creation of our own design if we are willing to let go. Fantasy becomes manifested and we play in a world of heaven and delights. This is more of a mayday for the guardians. They will visit you quite often to help you to realize you are misperceiving truth, which could take many generations on earth. When you do become conscious again, you will be ready to reincarnate. If not, we stay and will go through a curious period of attempting to contact our loved ones. They, in turn, may dramatize their feelings based on their beliefs. Life appears very solid for us, only we are moving about as an etheric body, our physical form lost, our astral form not realized. This is our plight when we have not awakened to forms yet. The conscious universe cannot reconnect to us until we accept this, for our minds will still be active speculating solely on what went wrong from all that we thought would occur after death. You can stay here for generations and never see another like you. You eventually realize that this current existence you're in is only of your own making. You are in essence standing still as time moves onward and you still very consciously view it move throughout all that you grasp it as real. The moment you accept that you are consciousness without form, a predetermined guardian will be able to enter your self-created universe and guide you forward. They will assist you in overlooking your last life and guide your plan when you are ready to reincarnate. This is how it is done, every time when you are a collective soul without awakening. It is peacefully yours alone, full of recollection and contemplation. Loved ones with clairvoyance will connect easily with you when they dream while you are in this dimension. In the beginning, stages while you are here in confusion, these loved ones will feel your suffering. Later as you become at peace, they will conceive this as well and even have wonderful experiences when they visit as long as you are here. On the event that you are an infective being and die, things will be quite different. Here in the dimensions of mystery, specters, and ghost our struggles persist beyond the grave. I will also like it to be known that if you are an infective being from entropy and have a natural death, you generally are quickly incarnated, perhaps even instantly within the area you currently live. The outer universe intelligently had foreseen your death and should all go as planned will not waste any time keeping your infected energies back within the area of corruption. For all unforeseen events, the infected being will move into the dimension of mystery. Think of this dimension as a place where we are placed aside until dealt with. To keep us out of gaining any consciousness, this dimension keeps us in a limbo of lost wandering. Incapable of seeing past our situation, this dimension is filled with the negative emotions of all wandering here, collectively creating a world of added suffering. You roam about here hearing and sometimes feeling all of the sufferings of the corrupted beings in this area simultaneously. You are after all connected to them in one giant composition of despair. Here you truly feel at one with them. No one enjoys this, but it's something that can't be ran away from. No rest, it is just constantly there. You can come across all others there as well, familiar or not, they will be going through their own internal noise and sufferings. Interactions can be randomly negative and even hostile. You will probably be here less than a year, at most a few. The difference from slipping into this dimension is you could incarnate wherever the outer universe needs bodies across the earth. There is a connection through this dimension that moves out of Earth's evolution and appears to tap into regions of the unknown universe. Most greater beings know of it, but none care to travel into it. We simply know it as the abysmal dimension. I will leave this for collective contemplation. Lower elementals, basic four elements, and higher elementals, holy, dark, and psyche beings. An elemental was first openly acknowledged by the modern world as a mythic being that is described in occult and alchemical works from around the time of the European Renaissance and particularly elaborated in the 16th century works of Paracelsus. According to Paracelsus and his subsequent followers, there are four categories of elementals, which are gnomes, undines, sylphs, and salamanders. These correspond to the four elements of antiquity: earth, water, air, and fire, respectively. Terms employed for beings associated with alchemical elements vary by source and gloss. The Paracelsian concept of elementals draws from several much older traditions in mythology and religion. Common threads can be found in folklore, animism, and anthropomorphism. Examples of creatures such as the pygmy were taken from Greek mythology. The elements of earth, water, air, and fire were classed as the fundamental building blocks of nature. This system prevailed in the classical world and was highly influential in medieval natural philosophy. Although Paracelsus uses these foundations and the popular pre-existing names of elemental creatures, he is doing so to present new ideas which expand on his own philosophical system. The homunculus is another example of a Paracelsian idea with roots in earlier alchemical, scientific, and folklore traditions. In his 16th century work A Book on Nymphs, Sylphs, Pygmies, and Salamanders, and on the Other Spirits, Paracelsus identified mythological beings as belonging to one of the four elements. Part of the Philosophia Magna, This book was first printed in 1566 after Paracelsus' death. He wrote the book to describe the creatures that are outside the cognizance of the light of nature, how they are to be understood, what marvelous works God has created. He states that there is more bliss in describing these divine objects than in describing fencing, court etiquette, cavalry, and other worldly pursuits. The following is his archetypal being for each of the four elements. Gnome, being of earth. Undine, being of water. Sylph, being of air. Salamander, being of fire. They have taken evolution like all within the known universe, proportionate to our conscious evolution. Nymph from Undina or Undine, of water. Sylph from Sylvestris, wild man, of air. Pygmy from Nomus, gnome, of earth. Salamander from Vulcanus, of fire. Many kinds of literature seek to define these elementals. Yet very few have a clear conscious understanding of their civilizations other than a collection of their interactions with humans. Like us, they are of consciousness. And like us, some are conscious. Those that are, can merge with our evolution should they choose. For we still must remember that we are but an evolved elemental within the physical universe. I am currently working on an in-depth comprehension of their societies, connecting to those willing to impart, and astral traveling to compose data. What must be known is that greater elementals from earth and water primarily reincarnate here on this planet. To gain greater status is rare and completely overseen by the guardians here on earth. These elementals may beseech to grow in consciousness by fragmenting within our evolutions. If granted, they will then attempt the amassment process. The beginning stages will be met with great fascination, much like that of a new seed birth. Yet it would take a greater being to see that this is in fact an elemental, seeking a particular realization. Perhaps even guiding them onward. Those that may be cognizant of this, will give the appearance of these magical beings, yet we may never fully put our fingers on this, for we are still in rising realization collectively. The fire elementals came into realization within Middle Eastern territories. The Jinn is of pre-Islamic Arabian origin. Since the Quran affirms their existence, when Islam spread outside of Arabia, Jinn belief was adopted by later Islamic culture. The Quran reduced the status of the Jinn from that of tutelary deities to something parallel to humans, subject to the judgment of the supreme deity of Islam. By that, the Jinn was considered a third class of invisible beings, not consequently equated with devils, and Islam was able to integrate local beliefs about spirits and deities from Iran, Africa, Turkey, and India, into a monotheistic framework. The Jinn is believed to live in societies resembling those of humans, practicing religion, including Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, having emotions, needing to eat and drink, and can procreate and raise families. Muslim Jinn is usually thought to be benign, Christian and Jewish Jinn indifferent unless angered, and pagan Jinn evil. Other common characteristics include fear of iron and wolves, generally appearing in desolate or abandoned places, and being stronger and faster than humans. The night is considered a particularly dangerous time because the Jinn would then leave their hiding places. Since the Jinn shares the earth with humans, Muslims are often cautious not to accidentally hurt an innocent Jinn. Jinn is often believed to be able to take control of a human's body. Although this is a strong belief among many Muslims, some authors argue that since the Quran doesn't explicitly attribute possession to the Jinn, it derives from pre-Islamic beliefs. Morocco, especially, has many possession traditions, including exorcism rituals. However, the Jinn cannot enter a person whenever the Jinni wants, rather, the victim must be predisposed to possession in a state of weakness. Feelings of insecurity, mental instability, unhappy love, and depression, being tired from the soul, are forms of weakness. This in fact has many similarities with dark entities, demons, and those that follow Lucifer, devils, in considering possession. A topic I may break down at a later date for clarification. Fire elementals, being too far removed to enter into our current evolution through reincarnation, have subexisted beside us. That is not to say that in the future, they may yet to evolve past their somewhat hostile natures and be permitted in. The air elementals are what we've come to know as Telosian. Mostly blonde in hair color, they give off the look of a traditional exceptionally tall Nordic. They have loose contact with the Pleiadians and other groups via ancient ancestral ties, since the Telosians are elementally connected to Earth like the Pleiadians. The key difference is that the Telosians are of air's evolution, and the Pleiadians were initially of water. Their evolution was fully encompassed in their plane of existence and already possessed high forms of society. For many different reasons, they are bound to the physical realm and placed here for either punishment or betterment, hence the conflicting storyline of bound Jinn. During this time, they attempt to aggrandize themselves to humans for protection by fabricating star being myths. It is felt that they would prefer to be left alone to live out their sentences in the communities that they formed. Yet when being discovered, this fabricated storyline as star being served its purpose well, and so it has been elaborated on over the Earth's history. Even now, properly educating new air elementals so that the deception isn't found. Like fire, they are too far from reincarnating into our evolutions and sub-exist beside us. There is no indication that they wish to either. It is important to note that all beings that are within this episode are of higher sentience. Many have within their planes those of lower conscious status, much like we have the animals here on Earth. These lower status elementals function solely for the universal mind and go about their existence with little cognizance of anything other than their duties within the overall scheme. They are looked at as inferior, and much like we make use of our animal kingdoms, they do too, in many unique ways. An angel is a supernatural spiritual being who, according to various religions, is God's servant. Abrahamic religions often depict angels as benevolent celestial intermediaries between God, or heaven, and humanity. Other roles include protectors and guides for humans and servants of God. Abrahamic religions describe angelic hierarchies, which vary by religion and sect. Some angels have specific names, such as Gabriel or Michael, or titles, such as seraph or archangel. Those expelled from heaven are called fallen angels, distinct from the heavenly host. Angels in the art are usually shaped like humans of extraordinary beauty. They are often identified in Christian artwork with bird wings, halos, and divine light. The word angel arrives in modern English from Old English angel, with a hard G, and the Old French angel. Both of these derive from late Latin angelus, which in turn was borrowed from late Greek angelos, literally messenger. The word's earliest form is Mycenaean ak rho, attested in linear bisyllabic script. The rendering of angelos is the Septuagint's default translation of the biblical Hebrew term malach, denoting simply messenger without connoting its nature. In the Latin Vulgate, this meaning becomes bifurcated. When malach or angelos is supposed to denote a human messenger, words like nuntius or legatus are applied. If the word refers to some supernatural being, the word angelus appears. Such differentiation has been taken over by later vernacular translations of the Bible, early Christian, and Jewish exegetes, and eventually modern scholars. According to Kabbalah, there are 4 worlds and our world is the last world, the world of action, Asiya. Angels exist in the worlds above as a task of God. They are an extension of God to produce effects in this world. After an angel has completed its task, it ceases to exist. The angel is in effect the task. This is derived from the book of Genesis when Abraham meets with 3 angels and Lot meets with 2. Christians inherited Jewish understandings of angels, which in turn may have been partly inherited from the Egyptians. In the early stage, the Christian concept of an angel characterized the angel as a messenger of God. Later came the identification of individual angelic messengers, Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. Then, in the space of little more than 2 centuries, from the 3rd to the 5th, the image of angels took on definite characteristics both in theology and in art. Alan Muehlberger has argued that in late antiquity, angels were conceived of as one type of being among many, whose primary purpose was to guard and guide Christians. Later modern understandings began to fully encompass societies within which they existed. Giving to us titles and the plane of holy, finally manifested into our evolution. Though still only having misinterpretations, primarily due to the conscious levels of the mystics. It was enough to bring forth later realizations. The new church denominations that arose from the writings of theologian Emanuel Swedenborg have distinct ideas about angels and the spiritual world in which they dwell. Adherents believe that all angels are in human form with a spiritual body, and are not just minds without form. There are different orders of angels according to the 3 heavens, and each angel dwells in one of the innumerable societies of angels. Such a society of angels can appear as one angel as a whole. All angels originate from the human race, and there is not one angel in heaven who first did not live in a material body. Moreover, all children who die not only enter heaven but eventually become angels. The life of angels is that of usefulness, and their functions are so many that they cannot be enumerated. However, each angel will enter a service according to the use that they had performed in their earthly life. Names of angels, such as Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, signify a particular angelic function rather than an individual being. While living in one's body, an individual has conjunction with heaven through the angels, and with each person, there are at least 2 evil spirits and 2 angels. Temptation or pains of conscience originates from a conflict between evil spirits and angels. Due to man's sinful nature, it is dangerous to have open direct communication with angels, and they can only be seen when one's spiritual sight has been opened. Thus from moment to moment angels attempt to lead each person to what is good tacitly using the person's own thoughts. Since we are still evolving, I wish to give this knowledge so that we can take from it all sources as was meant as consciously collective beings. The concept of angels possessing human form was the past understanding that they do in fact at times come into our evolution as reincarnations. They may choose from an array of reincarnations from the awakened status discussed earlier. Hence when leaving, they will go back to the plane of holy to implement their newfound experiences. Some, like Lucifer, follow the path of a light being reincarnation. They are bound within our evolution until we achieve collective consciousness and manifest the higher plane of spirit. Michael followed light being reincarnation as Lucifer. He felt personally responsible and wanted to take the battle personally on. They are both mainly amassed, but fragments still flourish throughout existence. Neither are able to freely leave until we collectively reach said heights. Lucifer, not wanting this to ever occur unless he had a real epiphany of victory, the rarity of which holy beings moving into our reincarnation cycles is diminishing due to the disbelief in them from a majority standpoint. They will on occasion reincarnate to teach us lessons of greater conscious nature. But this can only be in societies that collectively have awakened to their existence. The pure possibility of hostility many of our societies hold now was not of older societies. Many back then were able to at least understand a foreign soul's greatness. Today, we simply fear. When they reincarnate, they now hide their truth, sometimes even to themselves so that they are not found out until strong enough to take on any situations. All evolutionary beings will have vivid dreams and memories of past reincarnations and incarnations. This can be as easy as a reflection, or as harsh as a hindrance to their activities. It is on their path alone that they must come to a realization. On other occasions, it could be the powers that empaths possess, picking up on these beings within their environment. But this would be for the empath to realize that they have a tendency to pair deeply and falsely equate such memories as stemming from themselves. A demon is a malevolent supernatural entity. Historically, belief in demons, or stories about demons, occurs in religion, occultism, literature, fiction, mythology, and folklore, as well as in media such as comics, video games, movies, anime, and television series. Note that demons may or may not also be considered to be devils, minions of the devil. In many traditions, demons are independent operators, with different demons causing different types of evils, destructive natural phenomena, specific diseases, etc. In religions featuring a principal devil, for example Satan, locked in an eternal struggle with God, demons are often also thought to be subordinates of the principal devil. As lesser spirits doing the devil's work, they have additional duties, causing humans to have sinful thoughts and tempting humans to commit sinful actions. Belief in demons probably goes back to the Paleolithic age, stemming from humans' fear of the unknown, the strange, and the horrific. In ancient Near Eastern religions and in the Abrahamic religions, including early Judaism and ancient medieval Christian demonology, a demon is considered a harmful spiritual entity that may cause demonic possession, calling for an exorcism. Large portions of Jewish demonology, a key influence on Christianity and Islam, originated from a later form of Zoroastrianism and were transferred to Judaism during the Persian era. The original ancient Greek word daimon did not carry negative connotations, as it denotes a spirit or divine power. The Greek conception of a daimon notably appears in the philosophical works of Plato, where it describes the divine inspiration of Socrates. In Christianity, morally ambivalent daimon were replaced by demons, forces of evil only striving for corruption. Such demons are not the Greek intermediary spirits, but hostile entities, already known in Iranian beliefs. In Western occultism and Renaissance magic, which grew out of an amalgamation of Greco-Roman magic, Jewish Agata, and Christian demonology, a demon is believed to be a spiritual entity that may be conjured and controlled. Demons have existed in Mesopotamia, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. They also have evolved throughout this time. Piecing together their civilizations was never easy, they evolved best through our confusion. It wasn't until the Zoroastrian faith personally battled the source of this corruption that consciousness began forming a realization. The Zoroastrian belief in demons, Deva, later Div, had a strong influence on the Abrahamic religions, especially Christianity and Islam. The Devas seem to be a Zoroastrian interpretation of the Hindu pantheon. Particularly Indra, one of the most eminent individual deities of Vedic texts, is portrayed as a malicious force only next to Ahriman, the principle of evil, devil. But Devas are not merely the false gods of a past religion, but also the embodiment of vices and the fierce side of nature. Thra Tona slays the Deva Aji Dahaka, a serpentine or dragon-like creature with 3 heads. Thra-Tona's victory over a serpentine or dragon-like creature with 3 heads is not the victory of a great warrior, but to show that people who live in accordance with Asha can overcome evil. Ashma, a demon of wrath and destruction, appears to be the direct forerunner of Asmodeus, Sakhr in Islam, from Abrahamic religion. Winter too became associated with one of the Deva. Demons assault the souls when passing the Chinvat bridge. While virtuous people ward them off and succeed in entering heaven, wicked souls fail and are seized by the demons. In hell, demons continue to torment the damned. Demons are subordinate to the absolute power of evil, the evil will, embodied in Arman/Angra Mainyu. They are both corrupted and evil themselves. Demons possess no substance on their own and can only attach themselves to material agents. People who worship demons are blamed to give them power. In the Gathas, the primary way for demons to corrupt humans and cause suffering manifests through their worshippers. The Vendidad, law against Deva, is mainly concerned to ward off demons by offering laws for ritual purity. However, demons would not increase their power only through acts in their favor but also by every act against Ahura Mazda, supreme good. Everyday actions might be considered a form of demon worship. For example, cutting one's hair or nails and keeping them on the ground is understood as a sacrifice to the demons. Just like the demons' power increased by acts of wickedness, they are weakened by good deeds. Performing invocations of Ahura Mazda are considered especially helpful. The Vendidad further explores the possibility of humans turning into demons. A human who performs sexual immoralities or worships demons becomes a demon after death. A wicked person might be considered a demon in his lifetime, but only turns completely into one after death. In Japanese mythology, the term Oni is often translated to English as ogre or demon, due to their similarity to demons from Christian traditions. Unlike demons in Christianity, Oni is not considered to be intrinsically evil. Rather, they are considered to be wrathful and uncontrolled, but still able to be converted to Buddhism. According to Japanese Buddhism, Oni constitute one of the 6 orders of life in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth known as samsara. When a particularly wicked person dies, it is believed that they will either be reborn as or transformed into an Oni. In some tales, a person can become so wicked that they turn into an Oni even before they die. According to Shinto myths, a part of the soul of either a deity or a mortal, known as an Aramitama, can become an Oni if that person or deity has been insulted or wronged in some way. We must take from these paths a collective realization. The plane of dark originally possessed beings, these beings now can average under 50%. When the outer universe began its corrupted onslaught, what we have come to know as demons manifested through the powers that Apsu and Tiamat created together. This plane now has been in continuous conflict. Apsu leads his original children of dark against the followers of Tiamat who are definitions of demons. It is not known if Tiamat still leads them, so they were outcasts as leaders sprang up throughout their evolution. This is why Ahriman was able to step in and amass their followings. When we come upon ancient stories, particularly in Eastern culture, they were of the original dark beings for the most part. Being children of dark does present unique personae consistent with the dark plane's original design. It was only later that the new offspring were detrimental to the conscious being's existence here on Earth. The original is capable of reincarnation and may be granted this by greater powers to grow their consciousness. This will assist in strengthening their plane. And so, we could see dark beings' reincarnations. We may have an inkling to be cautious and concerned when in their presence, though an awakened being will recognize their internal kindness and others' misperceptions. They do not actively seek to harm, but to learn. But may be continuously surrounded by demons seeking to deter their learning. I have already on many occasions presented the ways in which demons attempt to possess our thoughts. We should now conceive this as a type of incarnation. Devils we can now associate with Lucifer's following solely. These beings and entities can fluctuate throughout their existence, either wanting to assist or wanting to harm. They are more evolved consciously and have more power at their disposal when influencing conscious beings. Since they have also merged into our evolution, they do not possess the hindrances demons do here within our plane. Those among the devils that are attempting to live a conscious life, do so quietly. They do not wish to be known by their past deeds, and the Holy Alliance sees them in many ways as still traitorous. Whereas those still loyal to Lucifer follow whatever agenda he may wish at the time. Their reincarnations can be confusing, but it is consistent with their actions. I write this, knowing that these entities never intended it to be known, but now it is time within the conscious collective. The most intelligent of entities can play a hide-and-seek game to stay within the physical realms and not be taken over by the outer universe. They do this by being able to recognize and balance what actions they take here, mainly realized by King Solomon. They create a false reality that they are for the good of most but oversee the influence of a portion of the bad. Allowing them to harm those that are bad, with the viewpoint that they are doing it for some greater design. These are those among us that have fallen prey to the outer universe and are therefore not on a conscious path. These entities are able to play out their destructive natures on those of us who are in effect lost from consciousness or soon to be. Now I come to psyche beings. I have already spoken extensively on their evolution on Mars. This past is slowly evolving within our consciousness. When wars upon Mars and its satellites reached a catastrophic scale, those survivors which were now too dense in the material universe to be permitted back into the plane of psyche were eventually allowed onto our now desolate moon. They were forbidden from the Earth, for their evolution far exceeded ours at the time. Not attempting to reinvent themselves, history repeated itself over time. When their technological growth and remanufacturing of our moon became too much for the conscious collective to stand for. I must be honest, the moon was destroyed by a collective of conscious beings at the time. It was initially decided to place them within another solar system. However, the solar logo stepped in and permitted their reincarnation into our evolutions. As psyche beings begin to amass themselves, they will have very conflicting realizations of this event. They are very factual, at some times may even feel superior type personalities. Incredibly well versed and absorb any of our current education with ease, even feeling it to be unnecessary on the deepest of levels. They are mostly interested in a deeper education and associate with fields of the mind. They very rarely amass their true seeds, because consciousness is this gateway. If you recall, their sole godhead was the universal mind. They may have unknown conflicts with civilization in general, for they existed in grandly organized societies. I am very familiar with the growing concept that they were hostile in their approach to our evolution. This is only in consideration of the mystics' current conscious levels to this event. There are elaborated stories of psyche beings possessing the Merkaba, and this is having a detrimental impact on the Atlantean civilization. As most know, I attempt to not use timeframes, but any who has followed my work will pinpoint this era more after the fall of the first Mesopotamian civilizations, before the deluge. I now give you the complete beings to which reincarnate into our existence here on earth. I send this forth for all beings to realize themselves within our collective consciousness and welcome you warmly. We are all here to amass our experiences and grow together towards truth. Even star beings that have fallen into this cycle, through deaths, are now able to experience life in a new light. We are a family richer than any in the known universe, but then I'm partial. Thank you for joining me in peaceful journeys.